Hello and welcome. My name is Scott. This is Optional Rule, my live stream channel around all things related to D&D. Hope you'll join me in the chat today. Today I'm just going to do a little bit of a hangout, talk about some culture building, do some random tables, answer any questions if anybody drops by and has any. Mostly it's just kibitzing. I'm trying to gin up a homebrew world a little bit. I did some live streaming on culture build. That must have been Tuesday or something like that. So I'm going to continue that tradition today. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mute myself so I can cough. All right. Well, welcome here. If you're new or your first time, go ahead and drop a hello in the chat if you like. I'll say hello back. If you have anything to add, would love to hear your thoughts as well. What I'm going to do tonight is just try to generate a few cultures for this homebrew world of mine. I did one, like I said, last Tuesday. I'm using OneNote for my notes here. Ever since I signed up for the latest Microsoft 365, I actually love OneNote again. So I'm leaving Notion behind a little bit for that. But if you were here, you might remember I did a little bit on the soul. 3 parts to a soul. The intention of what I'm going to do here is talk about what I'm going to talk about the adventure potential. Like I don't want to just create sort of theoretical background. I'm actually looking to create a discussion around potential for adventure and games and what does it do. So when we talked about the 3-part soul, the potential for that was it gave a logic around how undead raise and come back and how they menace society and how they fit in some meaningful way to create adventures around why you might end an undead's gorge, why they might avoid creating them and things like that. And I want to start out today with some thoughts on cultures and how to create those. Now, there's some high level, very, very high level. I'm going to show you this map generator in a second. If you haven't seen this, there's Asgar, on github.io. It's a fantasy map generator. I'm just going to do this to give you sort of the idea of what I'm trying to create maps with and give you a tool I hope you can use too. This is a great, I just got the height map layer selected here. But what I'm looking to do is create a large number of cultures, a large number of states for them to vie in and get back into not direct political play, but I'm looking for this setting for me to be sort of a multi-layered cultural melting pot that is has lots of history that's akin to a book like Wheel of Time, as opposed to maybe a book of bland cultures, let's say like Dragonlance. And one of the reasons doing this is because I thought it'd be fun. And I'm kind of over the having done many years of gaming, but specifically on 5e, there's the default culture of the Sword Coast, which is kind of no culture. It's kind of come out to be, and I'm just kind of over that. So what I want to do is create a more interesting place or more interesting hooks for players that can unify them around a central play concept. One of the things that I find about 5e when I get players coming, they're bringing their own headcanon in, but there's not enough. Like I put up a question today on Twitter about orcs and goblinoids. If you didn't have them, would you miss them in the game? And I was fascinated by the number of responses I get because they're all over the map. Some people are like, I don't care, it really doesn't matter for the setting. Other people are like, well, I just can't have fun. And there's obviously no wrong way to answer that because it's about what you like. But when I get an answer like, I couldn't have fun if I didn't have a goblin in there, that highlights to me what's a problem in current D&D, that whoever that person is, they obviously have a boatload of assumptions about what goblins are in the world and how they interact and where their place in the world is, or orcs or whoever. And that's just like any set of assumptions. That's super weird because you might come into a game where those aren't how they work out in the world, or the game master has a different set of assumptions, or the other players have a different set of assumptions. So this we've always had this idea in tabletop role-playing games of an implied setting. And that's always been true even in D&D, right? Even from the earliest days of D&D. There was an implied setting, sort of an implied just default to what, if you just started playing what, you said medieval fantasy world, there's orcs as bad guys and goblins as bad guys, although that's changing now, probably for the better, which is good. But just throwing people in as good guys or bad guys, it just actually makes no sense unless you have a world to build on to say, why are they nuanced, or why are they good guys, or why are they bad guys, or how did they all fit into the world? And there is what I wanted out of this. I have to confess, some of the ways I find some of current D&D challenged is, despite all of our efforts to give voice to races and I'm just using that term because that's the term that it's used in D&D, to give them voice, or to give them culture, or to give them depth. When you look at them, they're all just some version of orcs standing in a dungeon room for no apparent reason. Like, even when you go into these modules like the Sword Coast, if you look and you really start to dig down or think about it at any level of depth, there's really no way that these places could sustain any kind of culture, almost any racial culture, right? They're just these independent city-states out in the Sword Coast, and like vaguely there's goblins and orcs and gnolls and other humans and dwarves, and they're vaguely out in their wilderness somehow building enough supply chain to build swords and armor, but not enough to build houses. And it's just super weird, right? It's super weird. And to me, it is anyway. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. You can choose D&D to just kind of vaguely hand wave and not worry about these situations. But I'm kind of jonesing for something a little bit more meat, or at least as an intellectual exercise, feel like the world has a place for things and you understand how they are, and players can ferret out their place in it. And when you build cultures, you don't build restrictions for players usually. I mean, settings have restrictions. They have themes, and they do have things that fit and don't fit. But overall, the idea isn't to create a narrow set of guidelines players have to fit in. It's trying to create the backdrop the players are playing against. Now, they may choose to fit into those norms, cultural norms for a setting. They may choose to go against them, and that can be interesting. Any of them can be interesting. These are just backdrop for the players, not limitations. So as such, what does this tool do for me? If you can do a bunch of settings here. I'm going to just leave them where they are for now. Now, I'm not going to actually use a map here because weirdly, the map that's generated is generated from from the size of the window that you do it. You can't specify just like, well, give me this world no matter what I do. I do think that's a little weird, but that's okay. So what do I... Let me find out what the Ultra 3K Ultra HD resolution is. I'm going to just use that. That's 3840 by 2160. So I'm going to set the map to that. Let's say 3840 by 2160. 2160. I think I can do that. So you can create any canvas size that's part of this and sort of go around, and then just hit new map anytime you want, and it'll say, do you want to generate? And it'll do it in this really super cool way that creates all of these nations. You can see there's lots and lots of like the height. Right now I've got the height map selected, so I'm not going to go I'm not going to worry too much about this right now. I'll hit once or twice to see the kind of variety you get, and I've just got the archipelago preset chosen here, but you can use this for your game if you're doing any kind of world building. I find this super interesting. What I want to do, let me go over to, hey, VA Messengers, great to see you again. All Dominions here say hello. Yeah, good to see you, man. I've caught your stream once or twice. It's been pretty fun. Yeah, so this is why am I using this? This is an example just for the live stream. So what we're talking about today, VA Messenger, is just a little bit about world building. I'm going to do a little bit of cultures today. You can see if I zoomed in, what I love about this map tool is it gives you all of these sort of national maps, or some, if I want to go over to biomes, it gives you, it gives you biomes that they can fit into. You get this crazy set of, like, if I wanted to get states, there'll be a state pop up that gives me all the individual states around here. What are their, what are their cultures that apply to them, all that kind of stuff. It's a really enjoyable tool for me. So what I'm looking to do out of this is create sort of a multi-kingdom place where different types of races can fit in and cultures. And those are not the same thing. I don't want just a race per culture. So that's what I'm going to try to do a little bit of world building on tonight. So, all right, so let's go over here and go over to my cultures document, which is totally blank. I haven't done any of this yet. I kind of have an idea of so I'm going to do this bullet wise. I'm not going to write tons and tons. Outline of major cultures, major historic cultures. I'll call it major ancient cultures. So what I'm going to do here is just give a couple of bullets. So the elves, dwarves, and dragonborn are the most ancient cultures in the world. Are the most ancient cultures. They have like tens of thousands of years. I want to create this sort of dawn of man kind of thing. So Hyperborea, like Conan type of ancient world where they've been around for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. Back beyond memory of any of the races. Back beyond memory of any of the races. Humans, gnomes, half elves, half orcs. Orcs are latecomers. A la, sort of think Bronze Age. Bronze Age, etc. Not that they're in the Bronze Age, but think they're coming out through the Bronze Age. So they've been around for about 3,000 years, only about. So that would put them, if you put them in the parlance of modern history, that would put them about anywhere from 0 AD up to 1,000 AD, 1000. And that's what I'm going to say. D&D in this world is about 1000 AD, right? So normalized. So these are normalized around 1000 AD in terms of technology, not society, but and these are sort of decaying, in most cases, ancient high culture. So they would be the equivalent of the sort of ancient Egyptians or ancient Babylonians or any of the very ancient high culture worlds, and some like we've lost. There's a piece of history that I love to think about when I think about ancient world is that when the pyramids were built, the main pyramids, the big ones on Giza, woolly mammoths were still alive, and I love that piece of history. You can look it up on Wikipedia. They were actually still alive on some islands out in the Russian Urals, and they were still alive when they were being built. So I love that overlap of real world. But that's what I want, that little Hyperborea ancient world decaying and so forth. So I'm going to try to build a few actual cultures, and when I get there, I'm not going to assign them to a nation yet, but when I would come up to it, I would actually just create them out of these nations, do some map, do some random generation, and get a world together that I think was fun to do. I think I'm hitting new map yet again. This gives you a lot of ideas, but I'm using, when I create these random things, I'm using societal organizations, I'm using values of a society and so forth. So let's start with a culture. Let me just pull a name if I can, and I'll just call them something for now. We'll say, we'll go down to this island, the Grand Duchy of Chantir. Grand Duchy of Chantir. All right. So I'm going to go, they are part, so some of them give some historic facts that might shape the cultures. So why do I want to do this? By the way, one of the things I said, I wanted to talk about what potential these have for campaigns and what that gives a game and why am I doing it. Again, I'm not creating a published setting, I don't think. I might put this online, but I'm doing this for me, to give me something to draw, to create adventure hooks, to create world hooks, character hooks, and things like that. All right. So, what do I want out of these ancient cultures? So, I am looking for what I'm trying to do is break this idea of a perpetual Middle Ages, like a Middle Ages that has lasted 10,000 years, that there's some sense of progression, decay, humans being sort of brought forward in only the recent era. So I have this idea of the older races, and this is not new, right? I'm not inventing this concept. But what this gives is for a sense of cultural conflict between the elder races and the new races. And I'm not going to do a races live stream tonight, but when we get to races, long-lived races themselves, a key component of that is like they age at the same rate as human beings. So I'm not doing this like elves take our teenagers for the first 80 years. They actually age at the same time, and they have kind of like a Rumspringa, if you know what the Amish here in the U.S. have to go out and they spend a year or two outside of their culture, living in the rest of the world, and then can come back if they want to, or just stay out in the world if they do. And like an elf would, if you're 800 years old, the first 100 years you're probably stuck with this like boomer millennial dynamic, right? Where the new elves they feel like full adults at 20, but this 400-year-old elf is sitting on top of all the jobs, and so they're not keen on that. And the older elves probably look at them like, well, you don't really understand life very well, right? You haven't gone through and lost 3 generations of your human friends to understand how painful that is, right? So I want that balance. And important part of this is not to vilify any side in all this. I want to give them reasonable viewpoints that if you were to explain to a player, they can sink their teeth into that. They can understand the viewpoint from either side, any side of the equation they come in. Now, I'm not going to do monolithic cultures. So when I say this, these are trends in that cultures, but you'll have different cultures of elves, different cultures of orcs. Dwarves, not orcs. I asked that question earlier. I asked a question earlier on Twitter about would you miss orcs or goblinoids? One of my reasonings, when I look at this, do I really have a place in this world for like random bands of marauding monsters? Probably not, if these are cultures, right? Why would you have countries that tolerated this? They would be driven extinct or something like that. So I have a magical explanation for that later, which is this world actually it bleeds into other similar mirror dimensions. So you get intrusions from the Shadowfell, or you get intrusions from other places, but we're not going to get into that today. So the things that shape the culture. The younger races just came out of sort of nomadic lifestyle, like hunter-gatherer lifestyles only a few thousand years ago, right? We'll say that the 2 other things. I want a natural disaster, and I want a spiritual disaster. So I will say controlled magic, is fairly new. Is one of the things I can say in this world. So the secret of magic. So before this, only warlocks, sorcerers, and clerics existed because there was some divine power or patronage. Basically, patronage to the gods were a way to build power, or just natural leveraging of power, like innate power that maybe came out of the elves or dwarves or dragonborn. But like the true gift of magic was only given to all of the races a few hundred years ago. The gift of magic, only given to the races, or the people, it doesn't matter, races, several hundred years ago. And he caused a war in heaven. So wizards only a couple hundred years, well, I didn't even say several, like I say 100 years ago, 100 years ago. It caused a war in heaven. I'm not doing a races live stream tonight. I'll do that a different night. But my idea for tieflings are, I'll be creating different sort of races here. So the Tieflings Bloodlines are actually actual demons, or angels, or whoever. They're actual outsiders. When the war ended, some powerful figure that I'll figure out later actually ended it by fusing the souls of people who have been killed and were stuck in the afterlife and died in this war with heaven, with the bodies of devils and demons. We'll say devils instead. And that made them into entirely new people who have both the memories of the devils and the memories of the people. And that makes them these sort of tragic, tortured souls. So that war ended. So because of War in Heaven, magic is new. Magic had been shamanistic and or patron-like. That includes clerical magic. Driven now upstart mages who've taken it onto themselves. So that's one thing. The other is so these are global, like major global historic facts. So that will be a global. And the other thing is these, what do I call it? The sort of play of dimensions against one another. All right, let me get back to what do I want out of. So the first bullet here, younger races just came out of hunter-gatherer. The adventure potential here is clash of cultures, right? That there's it's traditional D&D stuff. So there's a hunger for the newer, either the younger upcoming species, really they are, humans and so forth, to want to delve into the secrets of the collapsed parts of the elven, dwarven, and dragonborn realms. The elves, dwarves, and dragonborn want to hold on to they're torn by culture, whether they want to hold on to their culture or join and guide the new races, or there's all different cultures that might play out over this. But that's the potential. So it's the interaction between ancient civil, dungeon delving, classic dungeon delving stuff, and relating to one another, which in these different countries. The other is magic only given to people 100 years ago. So what are the adventure? What the adventure potential here is the discovery of new types of magic. So what will I do here? I'll give tags of more powerful spells. I'm gonna use tags for like themes I would use. Recovery of powerful spell of new. Recovery of new arcane arts, powerful spells. That'll be one tag. What will be another one? So gift to the younger races would be recovering tags. It would be dungeon delving. Recovery of lost knowledge. It's down before. Lost treasure. Doing away with old powers. Rebellion. Those are all tags that I can use for adventure creation. So gift of magic, new recovery of new arcane. Well, you can't recover new, right? Development of new arcane arts. Of new arcane arts and powerful spells. This can be control, varied, what would I call it? Volatile worldview of magic. That would be another one. All right. And I was interested in having some sort of, and if you have any ideas here, by the way, toss them in. I was interested in also having a natural disaster. Like I'm always fascinated with like the Tonga super volcano or Yellowstone, and what would happen in the world if they would go out. If they were to go off. I look at all the videos and it terrifies me. So, or asteroid were to hit or something like that. What, do I want something in the world like that? I'm not actually sure I want it or not. Because that sort of breaks the, I know what I want. Constant intrusion from other worlds. Well, I should say not constant intrusion. So what I actually want is the world is actually still solidifying, right? It's developing its own identity. The place that dragons have in this world are that the longer they exist in the area, the more power they accumulate. They stabilize an area. That areas normally have pathways into the Shadowfell in forgotten areas. If there's a lot of violence or people aren't honoring the proper things within their culture, that opens pathways to sort of more violent realms where hobgoblins might come in. That's where hobgoblins. I'm not doing races tonight, but I'm thinking about having races that were traditionally part of the underworld, that they came out of folklore, hobgoblins, kobolds, goblins, all of these things actually, the Babadook, these all things came out of folklore that said that they crossed in from other realms, from the underworld primarily, when people would forget or have negative emotions, or they would be the creation of this spiritual energy by the emotions of people in the area would create pathways into these places that bring these creatures over, and that's sort of what I want out of this. So what I'll say is a drift between dimensions and planes. We'll just call it planes, near planes. Big part of magic and power is stabilizing the world. So that would let you have pathways to domains of dread. There'll be other types of terrain, like the Fey Wilds, or the domains of dread, or the domains of heaven, right? So this gives me tags. This gives me the ability to drop a whole adventure in the middle of a populated land when it would make no sense to have like Barovia sitting in the middle of a kingdom, or make no sense for players to go into an ancient ruin, which wouldn't necessarily be there, or at least if it was there, it would have been picked over already. Like I could say, well, it's a pocket dimension, or a gateway is opened up to another place that you can get there now. And that the world itself has been sort of roiling through these different realities as if they come out over the last tens of thousands of years. And it's only now that the world is becoming real, more or less. So the tags for that are pathways, mysterious pathways, visitors, we'll call it mysterious pathways, or dangerous visitors, or lands that shape to the emotions of people around them. So that's where all these traditions of people being kidnapped by the Fae or things like that. I don't want bad guys or good guys as much as the thing that separates people in the prime material plane from other creatures is they have these three souls, and the creatures that come from the Feywild have one soul. They don't really they're not beings in the same way people in the prime material, whereas they have free will. They just have a nature, and they might think, but they don't have a culture. They have a nature, and that's it. That's what Fae have. They're irreconcilably a certain thing. Same thing with devils and demons and angels. They're irreconcilably good or evil or torturous or healing or anything like that. It's their nature, and they can't help themselves. Whereas free will and all these other things are really the domain of prime material plane, who can decide what they want to be. But the end result is that those decisions that people in the prime material make shape the world around them and bring in elements from the other planes that reflect those emotions. And so we can build adventures around, like I like Horizon Walkers. I think are great guardians between the veil between worlds, right? That becomes a major theme of the game. And recovery of, owning your own life, deciding the sort of family of choice is. That's a strong, close to my heart. So this world will have the world of your choice. The world can become based on your choosing, right? There's not a set reality. It modifies over time. Although it's not like adventure to adventure things would change. That's the underlying theme, that the world can become what you want it to be. I like that. I think that's a good aspect of modern fantasy, but also at the same time, people are mired in their bullshit, right? That'll be the conflict. The world could be what you want it to be. However, most people are mired in their bullshit, right? That's a matter of fact, I'm even going to put a note. The world right up top here, I'm going to say, world could be what you wanted it to be, but people are mired in their bullshit. Yeah, that's what that's kind of sums up the world as a whole. So when I say political play, it's melodrama, right? It's not really politics. It's the melodrama and the minutia of the world and how that plays on the political stage and the village stage in people's lives with the pursuit of magic and power. That's what the core of Adventures in This World would be. So yeah. All right. So I've gone all this way to set the basis. I'm still not doing the Grand Duchy of Chanter. Chanter. E-U-R. Chanter. We'll call it Chanter. I like to put pronunciation guides. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but that's how I am going to pronounce it. So let's do it. All right. All right. So that's what we're going to go. We're going to go with this Grand Duchy. So I'm going to use these Worlds Without Numbers, culture guides, going all the way back. So what is the nation's thematic element? Example nation thematic element. What I'm going to do is go through the nation destruction or the nation construction stuff. You can make maps. You can make lots of different things. If anybody's on and you want to roll, what can we roll? Give me 4 D20s. Don't add them. Just give me separate ones. I'll read after here. Otherwise, I will use this roller here. What do I do? Tap, clear. And I want 1, 2, 3, 4. Throw. Okay, I have a 17, 19, 7, and 13. So what are my bullets here? I find this fun, by the way. These are disputes with the neighbors. So you have a nation here. Where am I at? Terrain details. All right, that's what I'm going to do. All right, so let me just give the nation itself, right? What are their major points? Disputes with a neighboring state. 17, they're suspected of backing assassinations. Who is? Disputes, what's the dispute? Is the other nation or the current nation? Well, that's interesting. So I'll just... I'll call it national tensions. Of backing series of assassinations. So that could be interesting about the world. So maybe they're, that's interesting. So all right, let me just keep going. 17, 19, that was their disputes with a neighboring state. Positive tie with a neighboring state is 19. They're considered unusually attractive here. That's a weird one, but all right. So when I get over to here, positive tie with neighboring state. I kind of think that's lame, but I'm going to do that anyway. So I'm going to say culture is attractive. So they share, let's say, I'll say in parentheses, you can modify any of these. These are only guidelines, right? Share, so they're kind of like the Hollywood of share a root culture with neighboring states. And that is the positive role. So everyone's adopting their style of dress. They're adopting their style of choices. So I'm already seeing like a Venice or something like that, or one of the something like that as a potential for this state. And when I go over to the map, you can see like Grand Duchy of Charter. These would be the other states around it: the Republic of Iznik, the Saman Sultanate, the Bolain Horde. That doesn't sound great, does it? So the Grand Duchy and they're sort of landlocked. So that would be, they would have to have like an ancient culture. So here's what I like. I'm already, let me finish the other roles and and I'll give you my idea, but I'm saying old core. It's the old home of a core culture. All right. I'll get to that in a second. So let me see the other roles. So the other roles are 7 and 13. So 7 is current national problem. 7 and evil is provoking outraged rioting. Okay, I don't know what that means. Current cultural problems. All right, and evil is provoking an outraged riot. I don't know if that could be a warlord or something. Let me figure out what else we got before I comment on anything. The last one is 13. Good things happening right now. Good things. An old enemy has agreed to a peace pact, probably because of that assassination, right? Has agreed to a peace pact. All right. All right. So now the challenge is to summarize this in some way that creates adventure potential. It creates let me see other things that might be. So that's the nation itself, national themes. Let me roll a d20. 1d20. Please throw it. 19. That is a triumph with victory of a fresh memory. So we'll say its theme is triumph, a fresh victory. These are coming together well. All right. And then I'll mesh the themes in some kind of narrative in a moment. What else do we have? These are physical appearance of people in it. I don't need to do that. Values of the society. I'll give 3 core values. Two core values. Values they esteem. And major. So we'll do 2 D100. And to here, I have to do that as a D10 and a D, or D100 D10. Throw it. So 23 and a 15. 23 and 15. So 23 is acidic worldliness and pious poverty. Okay. Acidic unworldliness and pious poverty. And their other is a, what was it, 15? That is education and knowledge seeking. All of that makes sense. All right. So I see them as this sort of high culture that aspires to being some sort of remnant of a previous area-wide culture. Let's say that in this area, if they were this grand duchy, if we were to zoom out, let's say they were part of some great empire that once stretched across here, and they're the remains of what they consider to be the last, last true core of that, maybe even the capital city for the previous empires in there. And that they, through it broke up into these bitter rival states. And they've tried to maintain control through things like assassination. Maybe the major university is still here. Yeah, I can see that. So, and by the way, one of the great things about this tool is it automatically generates things down to a depth I'm not going to get into here. But like I can click on one of these towns. If I were to go here, I can open this up in What About, and it gives me a whole other city. Let me see if I can actually find it. What does map give me? No, that's not what I wanted. How do I go to the map itself? There's some way I can link out to this, and I don't know off the top of my head how to do that, so I apologize. I can say no's for it. But I can find this big map of the city. Has 11,000 people in it. There's a dark. They say dark elf. I don't know if that's what I actually want. I can create a different. Feel for it if I want. But features. It has a castle. It has a keep. something else here. Where do I go to link out to it, though? I don't actually know. I just bring the seed over to what about and find it. I'll open up in a new tab. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, so that's a link out to what about. So you can actually get a map of these individual cities, which is amazing to me. And you can do that across this entire world. There are thousands of cities here. You can click on any of them and get these maps. And it's just, the whole thing gets bananas and fun. And I really enjoy that. So if we go back to here, you can see this little town. It's the same sort of cluster over here, but and it reflects back and forth. I love it. I think that's really fantastic. So, and then what's this other town? That is just 1,400 people. It's got a other couple of clear things you can find. You can do the same thing, like click about it and what about, and it'll open up here. So same thing, fortress here, lots of different districts, and there's a lot of depth to these generators. I really love it. All right, so what else can we generate for them? And we'll come up to a cohesive story in a second. Societal organization, the major unit of societal identity and kind of an example society. So let me roll this up 2d20s. All right, clear this, 2d20s. Oh, 2d20s, throw. 11 and a 7. Not adding them in this case. So 11 and a 7 is lineages based on ancient heroes' ancestries. Oh man, that fits very well with this idea of they're the seat of an old empire. Major unit of, and an example would be sort of culture things. Is a 7. So, I grabbed the wrong one, but I liked it so much I'm going to keep it. Meant to grab 11, but anyway, 7. Imperial or Republican Rome. It's kind of boring, but I guess it kind of fits. Themes. What do I call this? Societal identity. So that could be Elven. It could be one of the ancient races. I don't know if it lineage is based on ancient hero worshippers, and it is sort of a ancient imperial theme. All right. So they're all chasing back to some general or senator or some other important person from the empire, and that sort of provenance of lineage is very important to them. All right. So what I'm seeing here is, what else do we got here? Government construction. We got the ruling authority. This can get actually pretty fun. Forms of rulership. All right. All right, so what I'm seeing so far, which is suspected of a series of assassinations, is a dispute. Positive ties with the neighboring state. They're considered unusually attractive. So in other words, their society is. So I'm going to say they're the cult. This Grand Duchy is what's left of the imperial seat of an old spanning empire that was around here. That they consider themselves the old empire, the home of it, like ancient Rome when it was falling to the Western Roman Empire. They have been out of vogue, right, in terms of military. They don't have the military strength or the economic strength to carry it. They're just the force of their cultural influence on other families and cultural ties. That maybe they are, one of the nearby nations has a military dispute with them because of their, because they've been assassinating their enemies. Maybe there's too many assassins coming out of it. They've also just won a great victory, and I don't know what that would be, but it'll be related to assassination, we'll say. So there's lots of sort of political, this is an area known for its political, so let's get to adventure hooks. Adventure hooks in this kingdom would be so recovery of family artifacts, hiding lineages, assassinations, and political intrigue. What else? we'll say treaties, treaties and peacemaking, destabilizing neighbors. That's probably every nation, right? But so yeah, so those are sort of the plot hooks you would get out of this. Yeah, we'll call it peacemaking. Peacemaking. All right. So let's go to the ruling authority. Here we do a D4, D12, D4, and 3 D12s. That's what we'll do here. Some other stuff too. So D4 and 3 D12s. Clear this. Do a D4 and 3 D12s. 1, 2, 3. Throw. All right. The D4 is a 4. So that means there are a large number of small rulers in this. So probably noble houses, right? Old family, large. So there's like a senate. Large number of, what do they call them? Small rulers. That's probably what made the empire come across, like a senate of powerful families. So like Julii or Scipii or things like that, made up of the major families. All right, what else do we have? We have then a 10, 11, and 1. So 10, ruling class. Example ruling class would be warlords or military leaders. So old generals, right? Old. Honored most, right? And then we have a 11 and 1. So sources of legitimacy, 11. They led the nation to greater glory and pride. So like it's all tied. Nothing unusual here. All tied. Glory and pride. And I want to put parentheses for all like the underside of this, like all the accomplishments of not them, all of the other people. So this is regional effect. I'm going to put down a bullet here for regional effect. Regional effect is that these people, the ancient empire, this once led, predominates the culture of several kingdoms around. Them. All right. Political worked, and they've also wormed their way into most political and trade deals. And trade deals for no apparent reason. So it's kind of like the Habsburg of not ancient really, but old Europe. Just through these familial ties and negotiating ties. All right. What did I say here? So 10, 11, and 1. 11 was they had the nation in greater glory. And then servants of the ruling order, how do the rulers exert their control on the people? And that is a 1. Subordinate lords pledged to the ruler. So it's basically a military hierarchy transformed into a cultural, maintain, rule over by a hierarchy of patronage. All right, so I'm seeing very mafiaistic, bent to this kingdom. And I can figure out what other nations they had assassination problems with and what their other things were when I start doing those other nations. Because they always have like 2 problems with other nations, and sometimes they'll intersect and sometimes they won't, but that's how this generally works. Forms of rulership. Let me give 8. What did I say it was? Large number of small families. So multiple rulers is 8. Clear, D8. Row 4. That is a hereditary heirs to the position, right? So we already know that, right? Large number of small rules maintained by a hierarchy of patronage. Hereditary rule. And lineages. So marriage would probably, at least offspring, if not marriage, would probably be very important. Diseases of rule. The final step of creating government is to roll for pick a substantial problem that it's facing. So this is the problem facing these current rulers. So clear. D12, throw it. 6. Oh, 9. Not 6, 9. 9. A disfavored class is being oppressed. I hate that. So they probably have a real problem maintaining order, right? Maintaining people who work for them and their sort of privilege. So they oppress the underclass. I don't know. I don't have like an inspired moment. I'd have to come out with like who are the people doing this? What's their general race? What's their bent? Let's see. Are they multiracial or are they? I assume they are. If I just go by the map, the Grand Duchy of, go by the states here. The Grand Duchy. Where is the state? All right. Did they just put C Chantry here? I have to find it. Big old long list. That's a problem with these. That's a problem with, that's a problem with these. There's a Grand Duchy. Nope, none of those. Grand Duchy, Chantier. There we go. Oh, that's cool. Look at that. If you mouse over it, I know there's not a lot of screen space, so sorry about this. It'll actually outline it. And they are cultures, Trow, that they're giving it the name Trow. So they actually give you what cultures these were from. And it looks like they're Dark Elvish. So Eladrin is what I do for Dark Eldred. Dark Elvish, there's 61,000 people. So this is a Dark Elven Grand Kingdom. That's actually pretty good. And Eladrin, not... I hate racial oppression, though. Like the core of it was one of the old Elven kingdoms. New resident. But that, for a lack of a better term. But I don't know. It's distasteful. But all right. So there's primarily demographics, primarily. Dark Elves. Yeah, I like that. All right, so what you have at one time, you had a Dark Elven kingdom throughout this entire area. So this would probably not even be younger elves, right? There's a racial divide here between the generational divide. And friends, we'll say that. Okay. So the Eladrin at one time had a large empire across this area. Eventually it broke down, and they lost ground to the other cultures that were coming up in the area. They are an old imperial power. Poisoning, assassinations, and things like that were commonplace. They've maintained that political intrigue by having their families marry into the right places, and that's what. So it's basically a Senate-based Grand Duchy. Though why is it called the Grand Duchy if it's Senate-based? But that's fine. I can call it a what did Charlemagne call his things? Charlemagne called them like counties or something like that. I can always change the name at a later date. All right, so that's the bread and butter of generating nations through worlds without number, and how you sort of do that to give them hooks. So I'd have like ancient raiding old family houses, family rivalries, stealing people, old Dominion heroes. Hey, again, Scott had to get logged into this account. Yeah, no problem. Are you streaming tonight? You guys doing your campaign tonight? But yeah, so these would be, if I wanted to set these against a backdrop of family intrigue, kidnapping, sort of like a dragon heist would be a great adventure to root in here. Maybe even Avernus, right? Although it's going to the other realm. That's a little weird. Great. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. I think I'm following you guys already. If I'm not, I'll definitely drop a follow in already. The Old Dominion Heroes, or if you're watching this now, you can check them out on Twitch. I believe they typically stream Sunday night. Isn't that right? But they do a great D&D stream. Give them a watch. They're a great live play and great bunch of folks to follow. So so I think that's what this one nation would be. So the goal here, and as you can see, this can get quite large. There are a poop load of other nations all around it, all of which would have a story of their own. They might be sultanates, they might be republics, they might be barbarian lands. There can be any number of other things that have happened in this world, and it would take. There's ways to do this automatically. Mondays and Thursdays, not tonight, tomorrow. A battle royale you're doing on Thursday. That sounds good. Mondays and Thursdays you stream. Yeah, definitely check them out on Twitch. But this is the core of sort of culturally generating what these backgrounds are. Where, because of the nature of the world itself being fairly new, it's not immensely populated. You can see these cities. I think this one was like 11,000. Let me just take random ones from let's go to some other part of the world. You can see these are really large. It's awesome. And I'm not going to keep this world, actually, so I'll change that name later, which is why I really wasn't worried about it. But let's take one of these. Ooh, look at this. Knots of great kingdoms that you can have around here. If I were to click on this is a 4,000 person city. What else can I do? It's got to be something bigger. I know I've seen them up to like 45,000. But all these, what this is the top end of a set of chain generators. Yeah, this is like 6,000. This is a port city. It knows it's a port city. So when I go to what about, it actually creates this bay. So it's got this port, and it matches what you're seeing on the map, which is one of the things I dearly love about this. You can literally just like pop down another place in the world and say, okay, you've teleported into the Duchy of Theronia. If you click on Theronia, or if you find it in the States, you can find a little bit about the city itself. You can find about you want to go to this Claymouth city. You can find like what its major industries are, what are the racial makeups. Now, since this is a generic generator, it's not going to find everything. Just finished Dragon Heist and now onto the Mad Mage. I did Dungeon the Mad Mage for a while. We got a little bored, I got to be honest, of that. Dungeon Bash seemed cool for like the first couple months, and then we got like, I think I'm over. I think I'm ready for something else. Even though it was a pretty varied adventure, it was a pretty cool Dungeon Bash though. All right, so yeah, that's what so. As with all of these world building streams, this is just a bit of fun for me. My advice really for you is, if you're going to go generate your own homeworld, you don't have to use random tables. You can do it off the top of your head. I like to do it because it sparks thoughts, and if I don't like what I get from it, I use something else. But the point of it being is a way to sort of prompt, like you would in acting or writing prompts or something like that. This is something to give yourself a prompt to add and just kind of spur your own creativity. So in the areas where you're umming and on, this gives you something to do something with, right? That's what I like about it. But what I suggest you do, a great technique, is write out what adventures could I write around this. And the great part about a homebrew world, when you create your own, is the adventures essentially write themselves. And I'll tell you why. When you're looking for an adventure, don't give the players 10 pages or 20 pages or 100 pages or whatever of your world building notes. That is not the way to do it. Give your players a page, maybe two, but if you can keep it to a page, definitely do it for the campaign, the very, very high levels of the items, and then the rest of the world is expressed in your adventure. So if I were to do an adventure in the duchy Grand Duchy that I just created, I would have the players start out in some city, meeting on the sly with some noble comes in an old covered carriage that talks about they're a family rival that they have a rivalry with, that they think they're part of an assassination, and of course they couldn't have been part of. And the players realize that they're trying to get them to knock off witnesses or something like that. So that would express a story about the culture of assassination and political intrigue. Or it might be around the Lost Eagle trope, right? That there was a banner, like maybe the families, their major power structure is through the standard that used to be carried by their ancient ancestors that they claim to be a part of, and a rival family has stolen it and they need to get it back. Or a family wants to, let's say, come up in the world and reclaim their right to their heritage to some ancient general. So they want the players to delve into an old crypt that holds the old banner or old standard of one of their previous ancestors, and that being able, that's how you express the world. Like I can come up with 3 or 4 adventure ideas off the top of my head, and that's all because give me an element of the culture I just created and let me build an adventure around it. So you can begin to have the players move through the world, adventure to adventure, building up the lore and making it relevant to what the players have to do or adventure hooks that you're trying to get into. And it becomes a de facto way to just homebrew your own adventure and just roll forward. And you'll never run out of ideas for games because there's always something. Let me just grab a piece of lore I haven't talked about before. And that might be, let's say, I've gone through all of this already. Right. And I just did the 5 adventures I gave you. I need a 6th one. Maybe the answer is I look in let me just pick the positive tie with neighboring state. They consider unusually attractive. I'm saying the cultural values are that's a harder one to come up with, but I'm going to take my own challenge. So let's say I wanted to express what's going on. So let's say there was some delegation from this going to another one of these other nations, right? That they were there to do a celebration because this nation wants to adopt their holiday. Some people in that local kingdom want to assassinate this group coming over. The party has to protect them. That's an adventure I can throw out there. That they're worried about the cultural influence happening. The nation obviously wants to promote that, and it throws the players into the midst of that and creates an adventure. Let's say triumph and fresh victory that came out of it. So let's say there's an adventure around they just took down the major general or a general from another kingdom that was trying to take the great was claiming that they were the leader of the Grand Duchy. And there was some kind of rebellion from one of the other nations trying to annex this Grand Duchy back, and they fought him off. Let's say, though, that person's son is still alive and out in the wilderness. So the players have to go find this person and either bring him to justice or let him go. The players can do whatever they want, but that's the mission, right? That expresses the importance of the victory, that this can undo it. That's a great way to build. Let me go one more down the line. Societal identity is lineage based on ancient heroes. I've done that already. Large number of small rulers, that's already included. So you can see on the 5 or 6 adventures I threw out, I've expressed most of what this kingdom is about. And then you do 5 or 6 adventures and you're ready for some change. So you go to some other country nearby and it has its own stuff that's been generated up. Or you get on a boat and you go across the world. All of this stuff becomes sort of the root of the way you make sausage in your world, the way you make adventures. So it's what I like about it and why this nation building can kind of be fun for me, at least. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I've been doing this for about an hour, so I think that should wrap it up. I hope you got something out of the stream. I'm doing this for myself to sort of form ideas for adventures that are coming up. I'm going to continue to do this in an ad hoc way as the inspiration strikes me and keep going with this. I hope you'll check me out. I'm on Twitter at Optional Rule. I hope you give me a like, subscribe, follow, all those things here. small. I'm not selling anything, so I'm just here to bits about gaming. I hope you'll do it with me too. So I hope you'll engage me on Twitter. I hope you'll engage me on all kinds of social media. Come to YouTube, leave some comments. The algorithms are helpful. Yeah, hopefully somebody finds something useful in these. If you thought this was useful, please go ahead and leave a thumbs up. So thank you for joining me. I'll announce streams in the future. Right now I don't have a regular schedule, but I will announce streams in the future ad hoc. I'll probably do 1 or 2 a week. Especially at nighttime when I've got nothing else to do. So thank you for joining me. It was great to have you here. Remember, in the meantime, fun is not optional. Thank you, everybody. Take care.